On today's episode of Time About the Movies, we have Forrest Whitaker leading an ensemble cast in Lee Daniels the Butler. The movie is literally called Lee Daniels the Butler. We'll talk about the stupid title controversy that happened with this in just a little bit. We also have the sequel to Kick-Ass, not directed by Matthew Vaughn, and that's not a good sign. Kick-Ass 2. We have the first of two Steve Jobs biopics we're going to get over the next couple of years. Ashton Kutcher stars in this one, Jobs. We have Liam Hemsworth coming off the Hunger Games along with Amber Heard. Harrison Ford and Gary Oldman in Paranoia. And we have Kerry Russell starring in Austenland from Jared Hess's wife, Jerusha Hess. 5 films to take a look at. It is that started the dumping ground months between mid-August and mid-September, so are we going to get some good movies this week? We're going to find out right now. August 16th, 2013. This is Time About the Movies.
New Butler, Dr. King.
What do your daddy do?
He's a butler.
Black domestic play an important role in our history.
When you're trying to beat the
We're fighting for our rights.
you know what they're gonna do to you? They're gonna kill you. And let it go.
How's your boy doing? Feel like we're living in two different worlds.
Mr.
President, I know your son is a freedom rider.
I never understood what you all went through. You've changed my heart.
Everything you have is because of that butler.
Daniels the Butler, rated PG-13, August 16th.
Welcome to Time About the Movies. Today we are taking a look at the 5 films that make up August 16th, 2013. And we're starting off with our first movie here, the biggest release of the new releases, and that is Lee Daniels the Butler. And you're probably wondering, why do I keep calling it Lee Daniels the Butler? Well, when the movie was coming out, there was actually a little bit of a controversy with the title. You see, what happened was the title was up for possible renaming due to a claim by the Motion Picture Association of America from Warner Brothers, which had inherited from the defunct Lubin Company and now lost 1916 silent short film with the same name. So the case was subsequently resolved with the MPAA granting the Weinstein Company permission to add Lee Daniels in front of the title, under the condition that his name was 75% the size of the Butler. So they basically revised the poster, and it basically said, Lee Daniels the Butler, and I'm sorry, that's really fucking stupid. I mean, the title was taken from a short film called The Butler, back in 1916. I mean, it makes no sense whatsoever. It's a stupid controversy, and it basically says that you can't call anything The Butler because of this claim. Like, that's... I don't know. To me, that was really stupid. But the movie itself, though, what about the movie itself? Well, loosely based on the real-life events of Eugene Allen, who worked in the White House for decades, the film stars Forrest Whitaker as Cecil Gaines, an African-American who was a witness of notable political and social events of the 20th century during his 34-year tenure serving as a White House butler. In addition to Whitaker, you also have Oprah Winfrey, Mariah Carey, John Cusack, Nelson Ellis, Jane Fonda, Cuba Gooding Jr., Terrence Howard, Minka Kelly, Elijah Kelly, Lenny Kravitz, James Marsden, David Oyelowo, Alex Pettyfer, Vanessa Redgrave, Alan Rickman, Lee Schreiber, Robin Williams, and Clarence Williams III. This is actually the last film he starred in before he passed away in 2021. And, yeah, essentially you're following this butler throughout the course of history overall, and it's a really good movie. It's a really good film from a really solid director in Lee Daniels. This is definitely a much better film from him than his last film, The Paperboy, and it helps that you have a really good script by Danny Strong, who of course will later go on to write the Hunger Games movies that we're going to get to, Mockingjay Part 1 and 2. Part 2 being the best of the ones, obviously, because Part 1 was kind of just a precursor to the good stuff that was going to be the next movie. But he also wrote Recount. He also wrote Game Change. He's, of course, an actor formerly of Buffy the Vampire Slayer fame. He's done a lot of notable stuff overall. He's somebody who has made a lot of good stuff overall over the course of his career. And, yeah, this is a movie where he really does get a chance to shine as a screenwriter as a whole, and he shows it at what he can do. Of course, all the performances are really good in this film. Is it as good as Precious was? I'm not going to go that far. I think Precious was much more of a game changer and doing something unique and different with it, but this is pretty much typical standard Oscar bait fare, but good Oscar bait. This isn't something like, a Green Book or a King's Speech or Coda where you can just tell they're begging for Oscars and all that. This one's doing it, but at least there's stuff that I can actually look at and go like, there's at least some effort being put into it, some creativity being put into it in this. And like I said, it's no Precious. I think Precious is a much better film overall, but it is a really good movie with strong performances all across the board, a really engaging story about this Butler overall, and yeah, it's a very entertaining film overall. I think it's a very good film, definitely worth checking out overall. I enjoyed it a lot. So Lee Daniels, the Butler. So let's go ahead and move on to our next movie, and that is Kick-Ass 2.
Costumes, but it isn't Halloween. They're real-life superheroes.
Who the hell are you?
I'm Hit Girl.
I'm kick-ass.
We're the good guys.
This vigilante stuff ends now. If they're wearing a mask, they're getting detained.
Promise me that you will never dress up in that outfit again.
This isn't a costume. It's who you really are.
You and me, like Batman and Robin.
Robin wishes he was me.
Rated R.
So yeah, this is a movie that is basically what happens if Kick-Ass was taken over by a major studio and they told Matthew Vaughn to go fuck himself, because he's nowhere near involved in this film at all, and you know this thing basically kind of fell apart right from the get-go. But in this movie, you follow the story of, once again, Dave Lizetsky, Kick-Ass, played by Aaron Taylor Johnson, who is teaming up once again with a vigilante group called Justice Forever, with Hit Girl, once again played by Chloe Moretz, attempting to live a normal life, and Chris D'Amico, played by Christopher Mintz-Plasse, taking up the mantle of the motherfucker and forming a supervillain team to take revenge on Kick-Ass. Now, you're probably looking at this and going like, well, okay, well, what's the problem here? Why is this movie in particular not as good as it should have been? Because, I mean, it's got the same people involved in it. Clearly, a director that should have been as good as Matthew Vaughn could come in here and really do something new with it, until you realize this is directed by Jeff Wadlow. And if you don't know who that person is, allow me to remind you of some of the works that this man has directed, because he's made some masterpieces of garbage, such as Cry Wolf. Remember that movie, Never Back Down, Truth or Dare, Fantasy Island. The most recent thing he did was the infamously terrible Imaginary, which, yeah, that should have been your warning sign right there, that this thing was not going to take off in any way, shape, or form. I mean, this is pretty bad. I mean, it's a major disappointment compared to the first film. The biggest problem with the movie is that they really don't do anything new or interesting with these characters, or create a bigger storyline than the sequel to this should have. And usually for a comic book sequel, you up the ante in terms of the story, new characters but here, it's not in here at all. You don't get the sense and feeling that this movie should even exist because of the lack of effort being put into it. But then again, Jeff Wadlow, the most pointless hack director out there. I mean, this guy fucking sucks, man. He's a terrible director. This guy clearly has no creativity to him whatsoever, and it shows when he makes the most generic-ass superhero sequel ever. Like, you needed Matthew Vaughn to get back in here and direct this one. You needed his involvement in the film to make it work. And it just isn't there. That love and care that went to the first film is completely gone. And despite the best efforts of the cast and crew, everybody in here does play their parts very well. Aaron Taylor Johnson, Christopher Mintz-Plasse, Chloe Grace Moretz, they're very good still. I even like Jim Carrey in this, playing Colonel Stars and Stripes, but there was even a controversy in this with him in it, because before this came out, of course, we had the Sandy Hook shooting, and basically Jim Carrey withdrew support from this film in general, and, you know, basically it created this controversy overall with him and Mark Millar and Chloe Moretz basically telling Jim Carrey, you know, get off your high horse, man. It's a fucking movie. And yeah, and maybe that's also part of the reason why the film didn't do so well, because you don't have a big star like Jim Carrey getting behind the movie in general. But I mean, the visuals are still impressive to look at. The action sequences can still be fun for the budget that they have. They were so close to making this work, but Jeff Wadlow ruined it by basically, you know, saying, I'm going to make the most generic-ass sequel ever, and I don't care what anybody says. Like, I mean, you needed somebody there to say, hey, let's not dick around with people and give them what they want to see. A good sequel that's better than the original film. But no, they couldn't do that. They got a studio behind it, and basically the studio said, do what we tell you, or you can get the fuck out. And, yeah. What a shocker. The film didn't do so well. But hey, the original Kick-Ass is still good, so take that for what you will, so. But yeah, Kick-Ass 2 fucking sucks. So let's go ahead and move on to our next movie, and it's the first of 2 Steve Jobs biopics we're going to get in the next couple of years. Here's definitely the weakest of the 2, and that is Jobs.
What are you working on? Computer terminal that hooks up to the TV.
My name is Steve Jobs. Welcome to Apple Computer.
These are state of the art.
Steve is a time bomb. I'm trying to build
built Apple, and they're taking it away from me.
Something has to change.
Raise the white flag. You're either with me or you're against me.
Jobs. Rated PG-13.
From the director of Swing Vote. That's your first warning sign right there. Your second warning sign is that god-awful marketing campaign that has to put the modern music over Steve Jobs in general, instead of just letting the story be the main selling point of the film. But this is the story of Steve Jobs' ascension from college dropout into one of the most revered creative entrepreneurs of the 20th century. And this is essentially the film we've kind of seen done before with The Social Network and with what Mark Zuckerberg did. But this movie in particular, it just didn't work. It just was not really... It was just not a film that you could tell that people were putting their best effort into it. And I know this because 2 years later, we would get the much better Steve Jobs movie, directed by David Fincher and written by Aaron Sorkin, based off of the biography about Steve Jobs that came out in 2011. I think it was actually just before he died, if I'm not mistaken. It was either before or just after he died, but... There was a biography about Steve Jobs in this book in general, based off by Walter Isaacson. When did it come out? It actually came out 19 days before Steve Jobs died. So that's pretty impressive how that whole thing just kind of came together at the last second there. But the Steve Jobs movie that Aaron Sorkin and David Fincher did is a much better movie. It's a much more thrilling film. It's a much more engaging storyline about Steve Jobs in general, about how he became who he was, and it was a pivotal point of his career. With this, I mean, Ashton Kutcher's doing the best he can with this, but he just doesn't have a good script to work with it overall. And everybody in here is trying their best. You got Josh Gad as Steve Wozniak. He's good in here. You got Dermot Mulroney, Lucas Haas, J.K. Simmons, Leslie Ann Warren, Anna O'Reilly, James Woods, John Getz, Matthew Modine. Good people involved in here, but it really needed a better director and a writer to really come in here and do something that is very interesting about this guy in general. And there's nothing about this movie that makes this guy interesting whatsoever. The most fascinating person in recent history, Steve Jobs, and how his ability to just say, fuck it, we're going to do this, and if it fails, so what? I'll just keep going. Like, this thing just didn't work because it feels like a I think Rotten Tomatoes kind of sums it up best. An over-sentimentalized, made-for-TV biopic. Like, this would have been a movie that you would have seen on ABC or CBS or NBC as the movie of the week. Even when they didn't do movies of the week anymore around this point. This is the type of film that would have easily been that. Because no effort is being put into it whatsoever to tell an engaging storyline here. And this was clearly written and directed by a guy who really... He just doesn't have that mentality to become a really good director, on the same vein as somebody like, what David Fincher did with the Steve Jobs movie of 2015. Even the guy that directed this looks too much like Steve Jobs. Like, did they just hire this guy because you look exactly like him? So because of that, you should be able to think like him too. Go ahead and make this movie for us. We don't care that you wrote stuff like Amityville Dollhouse. Like, this thing was dead on arrival from the get-go, man. This thing was just... Like, I know we're still a couple years away from Steve Jobs, but if you wanted to see a good Steve Jobs biopic, just go watch Pirates of Silicon Valley in 2000. It's from 1999 with him in it, with Anthony Michael Hall and Noah Wyle. That was a much better movie that told the story of Steve Jobs than this piece of garbage does. But like I said, wait a couple of years, you'll get a much better Steve Jobs movie for theaters with the one that Aaron Sorkin and David Fincher did. So... yeah, Jobs, this thing sucks. So let's go ahead and move on to our next movie. Surely it'll get better with Paranoia, right?
You are going to work for my competition.
Not Goddard. Adam Cassidy. Of course you are. Considered a loner. I couldn't. Yeah, you could.
You're in over your head. Double-crossing Goddard will get you killed.
The kid knows too much. I'm out.
You are only out when I say you're out.
Paranoia. Rated PG-13. August 16.
Paranoia, everybody's coming to get me. My God, that trailer was so boring, it was making me fall asleep. That should be your first warning sign about this fucking movie. And, by the way, Directed by the same guy that did Legally Blonde and Monster in Law and 21. What a terrible downfall of a career this director had. But how can it be bad? I mean, take a look at this inventive plot that you clearly have never heard before. The high-stakes thriller Paranoia takes us deep behind the scenes of global success to a deadly world of greed and deception. The two most powerful tech billionaires in the world, Harrison Ford and Gary Oldman, are bitter rivals with a complicated past who will stop at nothing to destroy each other. A young superstar, played by Liam Hemsworth, seduced by unlimited wealth and power, follows behind them and becomes trapped in the middle of their twists and turns of their life and death game of corporate espionage. By the time he realizes his life is in danger, he's far too deep and knows far too much for them to let him walk away. My God, I'm even bored. I'm falling asleep just reading the fucking synopsis for this. This movie is unbelievably awful. Even if you didn't have Chris Hemsworth's brother in this, and you got Chris Hemsworth, he couldn't save this movie. And I know this because not but 2 years later, he did Black Hat, which was literally the same movie, except with a much bigger budget and a much more well-known director in Michael Mann directing it. And even he couldn't save that movie. Like, this is a mess of a movie. And we've seen this story done before so many times in other movies, much more engaging films. Whether they're supposed to be comedies or straight-up dramas, like Wall Street, or comedies like Trading Places. Like, there's nothing engaging about this movie whatsoever. This movie is so boring. Nothing is happening in this film. There's nobody in here that you like. Even people like Harrison Ford and Gary Oldman are just forcing themselves to try to get something out of this movie. It's just such a mess, man. This is a terrible movie. It's bad enough. It's bad enough that you make somebody like Taylor Lautner in Abduction look better by comparison. I don't think I got enough to say to you. Paranoia fucking sucks. Not Paranorman. Paranorman's awesome. I'm talking about Paranoia. Paranoia is fucking terrible. So with all that said, let's see if we can turn the tide with our last movie that we have here, and that's Kerry Russell in Austenland.
Hunting we will go!
I'm kind of a mess, aren't I?
I'm going to take charge of my story. An Austin heroine gets engaged by the end of the book. That is what I am going to do.
I'm really into you. You want to get out of here? What's that from?
You know, it's movies like this that make you realize Napoleon Dynamite may have been a one-trick pony for Jared Hess and his wife, because, my God, this movie was such a clustered mess of a film. The premise is kind of interesting, though. Kerry Russell was a single 30-something obsessed with Jane Austen's 1813 novel Pride and Prejudice, who travels to a British resort called Austenland, in which the Austen era is recreated. And again, a lot of good ideas can come from this. This is a really engaging idea overall. But unfortunately, the script was clearly written by somebody who has no idea how the hell to take this book and turn it into an entertaining movie. Because, well, your first warning sign for this should have been the fact that this is produced by Stephenie Meyer. Yes, that's Stephenie Meyer who gave us Twilight. First warning right there. Second warning. The script, the comedy in here is fucking awful. This is a bad movie, man. And Kerry Russell is trying the best she can with this. Jane Seymour's also in here. Brett McKenzie, Jennifer Coolidge. They're trying their best to hold this together. And even they're just like, come on, man, you got to give me something better than this. Like, the script writing for this is terrible. It's rom-com cliches, slapstick gags, lame slapstick gags. Nothing about this is funny. Nothing about this is engaging. And by the time the movie comes to an end and it gets to its conclusion, you just don't give a shit anymore. It's just like, just wrap it up already. My God. And it just keeps going and going and going, and it never shuts up. It never ends. It's a movie that just doesn't work. It's a film that's lazy. It wastes its good cast overall. It's a mess. It's a mess of a movie. What more can you say? Austenland just fucking sucks, man. Plain and simple. Overall, not a good week for anything altogether. Except for The Butler, of course. The Butler was pretty good. Everything else, not so much. Well, like I said, we are in the doldrums between mid-August and mid-September where the studios put their movies out that they don't really believe in. And next week is no exception. We have a couple of movies here. We have somebody else trying to create the next Twilight with the Mortal Instruments City of Bones. Because heaven forbid, if Twilight and the Hunger Games wasn't enough, no, every teen young adult book out there has to become a movie, regardless of how much we don't give a fuck about trying. But we do get at least one really good movie this weekend, and that is Edgar Wright's The World's End, the last of the Cornetto trilogy, with Simon Pegg and Nick Frost once again leading a cast, this time an alien invasion comedy. We also have You're Next from director Adam Wingard, which, yeah, okay, there's a couple of decent films here, but then we get back to stuff like The Grandmaster and also Short Term 12 and Drinking Buddies. So 6 films overall. We'll have a couple of winners here and there, but don't expect it to be another fantastic week overall. But with all that said, thank you so much for watching this. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please go ahead and do me the honors of hitting that like button, that subscribe button, and that notification button. Also, don't forget to check out our playlist, and don't forget to check out the previous episode we did. Now, with all that said, whether it's in the past, the present, or the future, I will see you at the movies. Take care.